Thank you. Thank you very much. I have this, I've never used one of these microphones that's just attached to you everywhere you go. So you guys got to hear my old man there. I was like, oh, as I walked up the steps. So I am a radio talk show host. I'll be on the radio today from 3 to 6 on 97.1 The Eagle. And thank you, that one person over there. That's indicative of our ratings also. So I'll be doing a radio show today with a guy that I met in 1982 in Richardson. We grew up here locally, and I want you all to think back to like your friends from when you were 12. And imagine if you tricked a giant corporation into paying you just to goof off with that friend every day for the rest of your life. That's kind of the dream that I'm fortunate enough to live. But it didn't start that way. And I will say, I suffer big time from anxiety, imposter syndrome, all those things. I'm like, man, somebody's going to walk in here and go, dude, how did you get in here? Get out of here. So it did not help watching Sam Chan be one of the greatest speakers I've ever seen in my entire life, knowing I had to walk up on stage after that. Thank you for that, by the way. And I sat there taking notes, and I was like, all right, how does this apply to me? What can I offer here? And I was really happy to zero in on a couple different things. Number one, being unafraid to fail. That's the number one attribute that I bring to the table. I don't think it's the mental skills. It's obviously not physical skills. I can't wear a shirt like Chad. I'm the guy too close to the candy bowl that can't turn it down. But somehow along the way, I got unafraid of failing. And I want to tell you how that happened. So I want everybody right now to close their eyes and envision their favorite rapper. Now open your eyes. Does it look like me? So I grew up in Richardson with two brothers. Both my brothers, absolute rock stars. One ended up being the CMO of Walmart. One ended up being the brand manager for 7-Up. Like, they're just huge rock stars. I was a career idiot the whole way. Just total black sheep of the family. Just the biggest parental concern my parents had to worry about. And at some point, each one of my brothers, president of the student council, straight A's. I was a career C student. The teachers all knew I was a little bit of a class clown. And, along the way, I piled onto that by telling my dad I was dropping out of college to be a rapper. With my best friend, Skin, who I'd known since I was 12. He told his dad he was dropping out of college, too. And we made a real go of it. Now, I graduated from high school in 89. I did go back to college and eventually finished in 99, but I am not a doctor. I'm a washed-up rapper is what I am. And so we got really close. Like, we opened up for Naughty by Nature and House of Pain and Gangstar. And, like, if any big rap group came through Dallas, chances are we had the opportunity to open up for them. And then we just kept waiting for that moment to make it and waited a little longer and then just waited a little long and then kept waiting. And then eventually, like, all right, we can't do this. And so hung it up, and I was devastated. Honestly, I was suicidal. I had poured everything into that dream to where I was convinced this is what I'm supposed to be. I mean, it's so crazy because I look like a police officer. But over the process of becoming a rapper, especially if you look like me, you have to learn how to freestyle rap, which is impromptu, making things up at the time, thinking super quickly, like rapping about a backpack or a box lunch or whatever, and you got to get really good at that. And so for years, I practiced that and got really good, got quick on my feet. And even though it didn't end up leading me to a rap career, it's shocking the way things work out. And maybe there's a higher power, or maybe there's another plan. I don't know, but we'll circle back to that. But so unafraid to fail. Here I was, I had failed. I didn't know what I was going to do next. And I decided, I had a series of terrible jobs. I was Al Bundy. I sold shoes at the mall. I worked in collections. I would call you during dinner to ask you to pay your Visa bill. I mean, the worst jobs you can imagine, I had those. I hit absolute rock bottom. And at some point along the way, I had a job. I had to wake up at 5 a.m., go cut business cards, and then go deliver those business cards throughout the Metroplex. I was driving a old Volkswagen Jetta that had the car stereo stolen from the state fair that I never replaced. I had borrowed my mom's jam box that was missing an antenna, and I put a coat hanger in it so I could catch a radio signal. While I was on my low-paying delivery job, I heard this radio station, Sports Radio 1310, The Ticket. Has anybody heard The Ticket before? And I was like, hey, this sounds like the conversations that me and Skin have. Like, these are just people talking about sports, but it was an interesting time in the evolution of sports talk radio because it was going from being all stats to being kind of entertainment-based. Like, I was like, these guys are musicians. They're funny. Like, Gordon Keith is the funniest human being maybe that ever walked the earth. This is not what it used to be. And I thought, hey, I think Skin and I think we can do that. Now, anybody I would go tell, they would go, oh, my God, please don't go down this road again. Remember the rap thing and the whole, remember? And but I was undeterred because I had failed and survived. I was like, I chased a dream, did not get it, so why wouldn't we try to do that? And funny the way life works, the way we got into The Ticket is the shows like to have funny intro songs, segment intros and things like that. But the guys weren't necessarily great at making intro songs. They were great at having those conversations. And so Skin and I started making intro songs and submitting them. And we did an intro song for Norm Hitzges. And it went, he doesn't come to laugh when he covers the draft because he's an old school true pioneer of the craft. Thought it was great. I could tell. That reaction is why I'm not a rapper. But The Ticket was like, okay, there's a little something to that. And we kind of got our foot in the door. Now, I had gone back to college. I got a degree in marketing, and I wanted to get a job selling television advertising. And I was interviewing with a TV station called K-Star 49. It was like they showed Maverick games and Andy Griffith reruns. It wasn't a great station, but it was a way to get my foot in the door in that business. And this reminds me of something Sam said. There was this moment where maybe somebody discovered me, or maybe I just got lucky, but I'm super nervous in my first job interview out of college. And my hands are shaking, my voice is kind of quivering, and the guy interviewing me is a big deal. He's the GM of that station, but he was a local legend. And he's just breaking the ice with me, and he said, "You come from a big family?" And I said, "Well, my dad's about 5'11" and 275. And he started cracking up. Years later, he told me, "Do you know why I gave you that job? You had the funniest joke in our interview." And I was like, if that guy's willing to tell a joke in a high-pressure situation, I got to hire this guy. I was not joking. I was like, "You hired me for that?" You know, it's like 20 years later. I was serious. And so I get a job selling television advertising. Now, all this is happening simultaneously while I'm kind of doing weekends, Maverick post-game shows, vacation fill-ins on Sports Radio 1310, The Ticket. And along that time, you know, my wife and I have been together now for 32 years, and I'll never forget what her grandma said about me. She said, "I like him, I just don't think he'll ever be able to hold down a job," which was a really good scouting report. The irony is, after that, all I do is hold down jobs. And so while I was selling television advertising, I was using my vacation time to do radio on The Ticket and grinding and chasing that dream. And meanwhile, I really liked selling advertising. I thought it was great. And so I didn't really know where my life was going, but I was chasing something that I loved to do. And, you know, the idea of things happening gradually is exactly what happened. It wasn't, boom, I made it on the radio. I grinded for years and years and years. And then in 2008, I had finally been pretty successful in television advertising sales. And I'll tell you some pretty embarrassing stories about that. But I'd gotten pretty good. And I had my first full-time radio opportunity. Now, because I waited 10 years to, get a real job, get out of college, once I finally started making money, I tried to make up for all the years that I had nothing. And I'll tell you the dumbest thing I did. I bought a saltwater aquarium. If you've never had one, it's an incredible adventure. There's a beautiful little ecosystem living in this glass box, and it's in your house, and you get to impact it. And it's just like having a fireplace for your money. It's as if you took all of your cash and you put it in a fireplace and you just set it on fire. That's all it is. You buy a fish, you buy some other thing decorative, you get bored with it, you buy something else. And at one point along the way, I was at the pet store, and what else you got? And they're like, well, we got a shark. I was like, oh my God, what? You got a shark? I could get a shark? Yes. And of course, I didn't have kids at that point. My wife was more consulting me more than she's managing me like she is now. She's more my direct manager now. I was just a consultant at the time. She allowed it, no kids. That shark was the worst investment I ever made in my life. It hid all day, and then at night, it would pop out and eat like a $28 dinner. It would eat one of the other expensive saltwater fish. And that was the stage I was in my life, but I was just trying to overcompensate for being broke for so long and trying to figure out what's going to be next for me. And in 2008, I got my first full-time opportunity to go full-time on the radio at a station called Live 105.3. At that time, I had two kids, and one was in diapers, and one was just recently out of diapers, and I had to go to my wife and say, I got good news and bad news. After all this time, almost a decade, I got my first real radio break. That's great news. The bad news is it's a $100,000 pay cut per year. Think about that. I had gotten pretty good at advertising sales, and I really liked it. But now I had two kids that were in diapers or one in diapers and depending on me, and I had to go tell my wife, I think I'm going to do this really dumb thing. Remember what your grandma said about me? She was wrong. But I was like, I got to go for this. And so I did. And since then, I've worked at The Ticket, Live 105.3, turned into 105.3 The Fan, went to ESPN 103.3, went back to 105.3 The Fan, went to 97.1 The Eagle. It became 97.1 The Freak, and now it's back to being 97.1 The Eagle. After all that time, I've never been fired. It's crazy. I've worked at all these stations. I've never been fired. And the reason is because I'm always looking, and Skin and I are always looking, what is the next thing? Like, how do we, like, we're in a very difficult business. We are swimming with giant sharks with razor sharp teeth every day. And we've survived. And it's so crazy the way these things work because I had to learn how to think on my feet quickly. Well, I learned that being a freestyle rapper. I had to learn how to make songs. I ended up making songs for The Ticket. I ended up making songs for Dude Perfect. Like you'll be watching Dude Perfect on YouTube, and they have this show called Overtime. And it goes, when the video's over, Dude Perfect's in overtime. That's me! And it's so crazy. And so I learned how to think quickly on my feet. I thought it was for a different purpose. It wasn't. When in my business, you just saw the great Randy Parrish talking about Parrish Roofing. That's one of our partners on our show. Randy could not be a better guy. And like for what we do, having relationships with our partners and really understanding their business and helping them like really grow, it became what our whole business was all about. And that's how we've survived. And so, yeah, it wasn't rap. It wasn't making songs. It wasn't freestyling. It wasn't advertising sales, but it's all led to this moment where I am now. And so sometimes I think, the thing is you got to grind no matter what. You got to work your butt off. But man, chase that dream. Just do it responsibly. Like Skin always says, we didn't have to drop out of college to be rappers. I was like, yeah, you're right. We could have just tried to be rappers while we were college students. You're right. That probably would have been smarter. Well, at some point along the way, we realized, okay, we're working for the man. We're in corporate America now, and this is great. We're having fun with our show. Sometimes it's not exactly what we want. Sometimes they're like, we need you to play 2 songs, or we need you to do this or do that. And we had to realize, well, we don't own this sandbox. And so we're fortunate to get paid to do what we love. And so sometimes we have to compartmentalize making it exactly what we want while we're still chasing that dream. And so we were endorsing a whiskey called Balcones Distilling. It's made in Waco. And their sales in Dallas-Fort Worth were skyrocketing compared to the rest of the state. And so we had noticed that, okay, our listeners, they like alcohol, they like fried chicken, we've got listeners that there's certain things, like we can sell Cane's chicken fingers all day. We could sell beer all day. Things like that really resonate with our listeners. And so we had seen these companies that we endorse scale up, go to exit, and then everybody does really well, except we don't, because we're just, radio hosts. And so we decided we wanted to go into business. We wanted to figure out a way to start a business. And so I was at my son's youth baseball game, and I was talking to one of the dads, and he said, we just bought a building in Salina that'd be great for a brewery or a gun range. He couldn't really figure out what he was going to do. And I was like, well, let's go back to brewery. I was like, my co-host is very passionate about beer. He loves craft beer, and we're passionate about community. And so the idea of having a place to go to bond with our listeners and connect and actually have a brand that we could grow, let's do that. And so we set off on this mission to start a brewery. Our plan was, we'll go back. We've developed great relationships with athletes in Dallas-Fort Worth doing sports talk. We've never burned a source. We have these great relationships. Once we get our business up and running, we'll go ask them if they want to invest. And I've never raised money prior to this, and it is brutal. I don't know, has anybody here raised money before? That is tough. That is such a tough grind. So anyways, we were like, we'll get this brewery started. We wanted to find a name for the brewery that matched really our career. We weren't going to call it the Ben and Skin Brewery. So we did some research on this region, and we found when the Frisco Railway came through here, they didn't weave it over to every small town. They weren't like, okay, we need to make sure this town survives. Let's go stop there, then let's go over here, then let's go by Little Elm. Then, they didn't do that. They just went, bonk, it's going right here. And if your town wasn't on the railroad, your town was going to die. Couldn't survive. And so the most resilient towns put their most important buildings on rollers. And they use steam engines to roll the buildings to the railroad in order to survive. And we feel like that's kind of what we've done by bouncing around to these radio stations. We haven't been fired, but we've always been willing to bet on ourselves and say, the opportunity we want is over there, but it's not going to knock on your door. And so we named it Rollertown because it's the metaphor for all of us that if the life you want is over there, go get it. Move your buildings to the railroad. Don't wait on the railroad to come to you. And so we were like, this is great. We're rocking and rolling here. We're off to the race here. We got a real business. The day of our grand opening was the day that the state got shut down for the pandemic. We did not serve food, so we were not allowed to let a single customer come into our business. Like, we thought we were cooked. We thought, wow, after all that, we're dead in the water here. And so we built a website. You talk about being resilient, figuring out a way to survive. We built a website. We bought advertising on our own radio show. And we said, you can drive to Salina, which is very conveniently located next to the North Pole. We're not even in downtown Salina. We're on the north side of. Have you ever heard of Gunner? You can come out there on your way somewhere else. I know it's convenient. Get a 4-pack to go. You can't stay, and then you got to go back wherever. It made no sense. And you're buying it 3 weeks in advance. So my brother, who's our CEO, he built the website. We'd never built a website before. And we said on our radio show and social media, hey, you can come get a 4-pack or whatever. You got to order it now. Get it in 3 weeks. Come get it. You can't stay. And we sold out in 57 minutes. Thank you. We sold out in 57 minutes, and from that point on, it's just been, every couple weeks you get punched in the mouth and you get up, you dust yourself off, and you try to figure out how to overcome whatever the next thing is. And I asked my brother who runs the business, I'm like, I used to call him and he'd go, oh my gosh, this happened today. And I could hear the stress in his voice. This happened today. And then eventually he didn't sound stressed. I was like, what, is everything good now? And he goes, no, it's hard every day. Like, no. I'll go, well, give me an example. He goes, I'll just give you the type of example. Let's just say a dinosaur showed up and ate the business. That's the type of stuff I'm dealing with like every day. I was like, just let me know what you need. Let me know if you need me. So at that time, we decided, well, let's go ask our friends, our athletes to invest. And I'm super proud of this because when you interact with pro athletes and you have a good relationship and they're giving you good information, there's a lot of media people who will go right to the radio and say, oh my gosh, Luka said this. You're not going to believe what Dak just said, And of course, they don't have a relationship with those players anymore, but they up their media profile, they get clicks or whatever. We never did that. We had good inside information, and we never burned a source. And so we went and asked Dirk Nowitzki to invest in Rollertown. He did. So Dirk is our freaking partner in this. How crazy is that? So we came out with a beer to honor Dirk. It's called the Big German, because that's one of his nicknames. The tagline is, minimal hops with a smooth finish. For a reason. So along the way, we're rocking and rolling with this brewery and overcoming obstacles and growing. And we saw that cities, municipalities started cutting deals with breweries and distilleries to grow their business. These cities are trying to figure out, how do I get something cool for my city to keep tax dollars in town so people aren't leaving for other things? They did a study on Frisco. People were leaving to go see live music, going to breweries, distilleries, those types of things. And so we ended up cutting a deal with the city of Frisco. And so that's what is opening on Main Street, maybe in October, maybe in November, but we're super proud of that. And it's a culmination of like all these years of hard work and all these weird things that I didn't know at the time were interlinked. It was really just the energy of those things, the spirit of those things. That was the synergy. And so I'm going to leave you with this. I'm going to leave you with my best story. And this sums up my brother, who's the CEO of Rollertown and who runs our business, and it sums up my family, our family dynamic, and all of that. So in February of 2005, my dad thought he had the flu. Now, my dad was a hilarious guy, by the way. This story is going to start out really sad. It's going to get better, okay? I'm warning you. My dad was the type of guy, he had a joke Rolodex. Somebody mentions round table. He's got 37 jokes about a round table in his mind that he can choose from to tell. Like, it's a lost art telling jokes. He was just a funny guy. And we always did funny things in our family. Like, I remember we were driving down the street. My older brother's in the front seat. Me and my younger brother in the back seat. And my older brother, he looks in the back seat and he goes, and he starts turning up the volume on the radio real slowly. Just turning it up louder and louder and louder until my dad goes, hey, what are you doing? And so that's how our family was wired. We just messed with each other. We told jokes all the time. And so that's kind of how we deal with things, right? So in February of 2005, my dad thought he had the flu. He went to a doc in the box. Turns out it was pancreatic cancer. He died 28 days after diagnosis. 28 days. I lost my mom to cancer. She fought. It was a 5-year battle, and I've heard different things. Is it better to happen quickly, or it's just tough any way you do it? So, again, the story does get better. So, my dad passed away. It takes 28 days, and he's gone. So, each night, my mom would go home. He was at a hospital in Plano. She would go home to Richardson, and she's up there all day, every day. And we were like, let mom go get good sleep in her bed. We'll alternate who sleeps in the hospital room that night. And so it would be my older brother, then me, then my younger brother, and we rotated nights. And on the day that my dad finally passed away, it was about 6 a.m, and it was me. It was my night. And so my dad left this world with me by myself holding his hand. And I'm texting my brothers and calling my mom, hey, guys, get up here as soon as you can. hurry up, get up here, because the nurses are like, hey, it's happening now. We already knew it was happening. They were just making him comfortable. But that's an odd sensation when someone's passing that means that much to you, and there's no one racing in to save the day, right? Because you're just trying to make him comfortable. So anyways, he passed, and my family got there. And they rush in, and remember, we use humor in my family to deal with things. My brother said to me the greatest thing anyone's ever said to me. Everybody rushed to my dad's bedside, except my brother. He came to me, and I'm bawling. And he comes to me, and he says, never would have happened on my watch. It's the best thing anyone's ever told me. So one time, the Mavericks had this real prickly coach. I put an LY on that because we're in church. And his name was Rick Carlisle. He was kind of hard to deal with. And I was trying to bond with him, so I told him that story because he had lost a friend to pancreatic cancer. And he looked at me and he goes, why would anyone ever say that to anyone else? I think that's the last thing he ever said to me. I haven't said anything else to him. Anyways, I feel blessed to be here. I don't feel worthy of being here. I appreciate you guys humoring me. Really proud of our radio show, the Ben and Skin Show, what it's turned into with Rollertown. And this is my church, and I'm super honored that they asked me to do this. So just want to say thank you guys very much for having me.
Ben, thank you so much again. Man, can we just one more time put our hands together and just thank Ben? I feel like after everything you shared from your rap career to the story with your dad, my mind is still blown that you're the voice of the overtime from Dude Perfect. And as soon as you said that, I was like, I hear it.
He goes,
tall guy, beard, twins, purple hoser.
Dude Perfect's in over.
I have a 14-year-old. I know exactly how the song goes. It's man, that's crazy. Hey, we want to honor your time. We want to honor your time as well. I actually want to go back to something you said right at the very beginning, because it's kind of an interesting dynamic. You mentioning, hey, I struggle with some anxiety and imposter syndrome in the very beginning, and then we all just got to watch, like, you just deliver a stage in front of hundreds of people here on stage, deliver a speech. How would you encourage maybe those in the crowd who struggle with that, have that anxiety, struggle with that imposter syndrome? What would be an encouragement that you would say to them to say, hey, not let that be a debilitating thing, but a thing to say, hey, you can fail forward, you can continue to go on and pursue your dreams, your calling, whatever those things are. How would you encourage someone in that?
That's a good question. I feel like Sam, because I'm just going to make something up.
Perfect.
Right before I came up here, as the moments got closer, I got more and more and more nervous. My hands started sweating. I was like, oh no, what am I going to talk about? I haven't timed this out. Is this going to, I'm going to crash and burn. And I bumped into a friend of mine that I went to high school with. He's over here, Jason Binion. He was a world-class, hold up your hand, Jason. There he is, a world-class tennis player. And I was talking to Jason, and we were just like, hey, how you doing? He goes, man, I'm doing better than you. I'm not about to speak to 500 people. I was like, it's the type of grief you give friends from back in the day. But I was like, that's the last thing I heard before Randy introduced me and I came up here. I was like, oh my God, how many people are here?
He's just like your brother.
Yeah, just like my brother. I think, I don't know what happens. In a situation like this, I tried not to look at anybody. I just try to look at a bunch of blurs. And luckily, the older I get, the easier that is. I can't really see very well anyways. But I always just fake it till I make it. And, I'm an insecure person. I have anxiety. I have imposter syndrome. Those things are always racing through my mind. But I know that if I let those thoughts win, I'll never accomplish anything. Yeah. And so I just grind through it. That's not a very good answer. But I just try to ignore it. Maybe I just black out like Will Ferrell in Back to School, during the debate. What just happened? I don't know. But I think I fake it till I make it.
Yeah, that works. Ben, thank you so much. Yeah. Okay, one more time, can we put our hands together? Thank Ben Rogers for being here.